Sure. Here's section 1 of the script, written to be tight, emotional, and immersive. It's kept at a minimum of 1,500 words, without repetition or filler, ideal for a faceless Reddit-style voiceover. I came home for the summer thinking it'd be just like every other year. Same bedroom, same overcooked BBQs from Dad, same quiet tension that lingered in the air like it always did since the divorce. But this time felt different the moment I stepped into the house. Not because of what had changed, but because of who hadn't. Dad wasn't home when I arrived. Typical. But she was. My stepmom, Rachel, opened the door like she'd been expecting me for days. Her eyes scanned me quickly, nodding with the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You've grown," she said, before turning and walking back into the house like it was just another Thursday. I stood there a moment longer than I should have, unsure why her voice suddenly felt warmer than I remembered. Rachel married my dad 3 years ago, maybe 4. I didn't go to the wedding. I was away at college and Dad didn't push it. He never did. He told me once, over a distracted phone call, that Rachel was different. Said she was stable, organized, didn't nag. I think that was all he really needed at this point in his life, order. And she did keep order. The house was spotless. I swear the air even smelled like discipline, lavender, pine glass cleaner. Everything had a place, and Rachel always seemed to be moving, wiping, folding, or tidying. Even now, as I dropped my bag in the hallway, she was already wiping down a countertop in the kitchen, not looking at me, just doing. We didn't talk much that first evening. Dad came home late. He glanced at me, offered one of those half-hugs men do when they don't know how to be real with their sons, and then poured himself a drink. Rachel served dinner, sat silently, and answered his few comments with short nods. Her eyes barely met mine, but I felt them, hovering at the edge of my presence. Over the next few days, I noticed a rhythm to the house. Dad worked all the time. He left early, came back late, ate fast, watched the news, and went to bed. Rachel stayed behind, tending to everything else. Laundry, groceries, bills, dishes, the lawn guy. She never asked for help and never complained. But I watched. Not in a creepy way. At least, not at first. But when someone moves so perfectly, so deliberately through their world, it's hard not to stare. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear when it got in her face while chopping vegetables. The way her sleeves were always rolled up just enough to show her forearms, clean and bare, skin almost too smooth for her age. The way she never wore perfume, but always smelled like warmth. I caught myself once, looking too long. She glanced up, and our eyes met for a second too long. She didn't say anything, just went back to folding clothes, but something changed in that silence. A shift I couldn't name then. One night, I went downstairs for water. It was after midnight. I figured everyone was asleep, but there she was on the back patio, sitting alone with a glass of red wine. Her feet were bare. Her posture was relaxed for once, leaning into the chair like she finally let herself breathe. She looked over her shoulder and didn't seem surprised to see me. "Can't sleep?" she asked. I shook my head. "You?" She smiled at her glass. "Rarely." There was something in the way she said it. Not sadness, but emptiness. Like someone who got used to being unnoticed. I stepped outside, the air cool against my arms. She didn't speak for a while, and I didn't interrupt. The silence was full, almost comfortable. "I used to write," she said suddenly, not looking at me. "Really?" I asked. "Poetry. When I was younger. Before a life got busy." I didn't know what to say. I barely knew anything about her beyond what I saw. "What happened?" I asked gently. She laughed. It wasn't a real laugh, just air and regret. I guess I convinced myself that duty mattered more than passion. So, I traded pens for dish soap. That line stuck with me. She sipped her wine and stood slowly. "Get some rest," she said, walking past me without waiting for a reply. I watched her go. Something twisted in my chest. Not desire, not yet. Just something. The days passed. Dad kept vanishing into his work, and Rachel kept pretending that was normal. I started helping around the house, quietly, without asking. I'd take out the trash, fix a loose hinge on a cabinet, bring in the groceries before she could get to them. She noticed. She never said thank you, but her eyes softened. One afternoon, I walked into the living room and saw her crouched by the fireplace, wiping dust from the mantel. Her shirt had ridden up slightly, exposing a line of skin just above her waistband. I froze, not because of what I saw, but because of how fast my brain reacted. I looked away fast, but she had already turned. Our eyes met again. She didn't pull the shirt down, didn't rush to cover herself. Just watched me for a second, then continued dusting like nothing happened. Later that night, I lay awake thinking about it. Not in a lustful way, not fully. More like confusion. Guilt. Wondering why that moment stuck in my head longer than it should have. The next morning, she made coffee. 2 mugs instead of 1. Figured you might be up, she said, sliding the second cup toward me. Thanks. We sat in silence, sipping quietly. She looked tired, eyes puffy, lips dry, hair still damp from the shower. You ever think about leaving? I asked suddenly. She looked at me like she wasn't sure she heard right. This life. The routine. Do you ever think about just starting over? She took a long sip, then set her cup down carefully. All the time, she said. That was it. Just those words. But they landed like thunder. I didn't push further. Didn't have to. The silence after was enough. That evening, Dad came home late again. Drunk. Not sloppy, just careless. He didn't acknowledge her. Didn't ask how her day went. Didn't notice that she had set the table for 3 and waited an hour before giving up and clearing it. I watched her from a hallway as she scraped his untouched dinner into the trash. No anger. Just quiet resignation. I stepped forward, picked up the second plate, and helped. She paused, looked at me like she was seeing me clearly for the first time. Thanks, she whispered. Her voice cracked just a little. And I realized then, she wasn't cold. She wasn't robotic. She wasn't emotionless. She was just tired of being invisible. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept replaying the way her eyes looked at me, soft, searching, a little afraid. Like she wanted to ask a question but didn't trust the answer. And for the first time since coming home, I wasn't sure who I was anymore in this house. The roles were blurring, and something in me was shifting faster than I wanted to admit. Let me know when you're ready for section 2, or if you'd like a particular tone shift or detail added. After that night, something unspoken settled between us. It wasn't awkward, not yet, but it was there, like the quiet hum of electricity in a room. She moved like she always did, graceful and composed, but every glance, every word carried a weight that hadn't been there before. I started waking up early just to be around her more. I'd find excuses to linger in the kitchen, ask if she needed help with things I never cared about before. At first, she kept her distance, answering short, efficient. But little by little, she softened. Not in how she moved, but in how she looked at me, longer, steadier. One afternoon, we sat across from each other at the kitchen table. She was flipping through a magazine, not really reading, and I was pretending to scroll my phone. Do you like being away at school? She asked without looking up. It's okay. It's quiet. But sometimes it feels fake. She nodded, still not meeting my eyes. Real life usually does. I asked her if she ever thought about going back to school or doing something different. She smiled, dry and distant. I used to want a bookstore. Small one. With coffee and old vinyl playing in the back. Why didn't you? She looked at me for the first time in that conversation, eyes tired. Because I was supposed to be someone's wife. And then someone's second wife. I didn't know what to say. There was a sadness in her that didn't ask for pity. It just existed. A permanent part of her. After that, we started talking more. At night, when Dad was gone or passed out on the couch, she'd pour 2 glasses of wine and meet me on the patio. We talked about music, about poetry, about nothing. I told her things I hadn't told anyone. She listened like no one else ever had. She laughed differently with me. Not loudly, but fully. Like something inside her was loosening. I caught myself studying her. how she held the wine glass, how her lips curved when she was thinking. There were moments when I forgot she was my stepmother. Moments when she didn't feel like anyone's wife. She told me about her first love. A guy who played guitar, wrote her letters. She almost married him, but life pulled them apart. She never said it, but I could tell she still carried him somewhere deep. I told her about a girl I used to date, how it ended, how I never really connected with anyone since. She didn't respond right away, just reached out and touched my hand briefly. It was soft, casual, but everything changed in that second. I felt it in my chest, in my stomach. That quiet panic you feel when you know you want something you shouldn't. After that night, we started finding reasons to touch. A hand on the back. A brush of fingers when passing something. Always brief. Always deliberate. One evening, I stood behind her while she chopped vegetables. She asked me to reach for a spice on the top shelf. I leaned close, and our shoulders touched. She didn't move away. Neither did I. She asked me what I was thinking. I told her the truth. I'm thinking I shouldn't be this close to you. She kept chopping, slow and careful. But you are. It wasn't a question. The air between us grew heavier after that. Every word, every glance, felt like it had another meaning. One night, she asked if I wanted to hear something she'd written. She pulled out a small notebook, worn and frayed, pages full of delicate handwriting. She read a poem about feeling trapped in a perfect house, about glass windows and invisible walls. I didn't say anything after she finished. I couldn't. You won't tell anyone? She asked. I'd never. She looked at me differently then. Not like a stepson. Not like a friend. Like someone who saw her completely. The next day, I avoided her. Stayed in my room. I needed space to think, to breathe. But even then, I couldn't stop picturing her face, hearing her voice, feeling the way my skin reacted to her touch. She knocked on my door that night. I made tea, she said. You don't have to talk. I followed her down. We sat in silence for a long time. No one said anything about the distance we'd created. But it was gone now. She reached out and touched my arm. Her hand stayed longer this time. I'm not sure what this is, she said softly. Me either. But it doesn't feel wrong, she added. I didn't respond. I couldn't. There was a pull between us, subtle but undeniable. It wasn't lust, not purely. It was something deeper, more dangerous. Like finding water after a long drought and trying not to drink too fast. I started watching the way she looked at Dad. Mechanical, polite. No softness, no affection. Just duty. She never smiled when he walked into a room. But with me, she did. He never touched her gently. Never lingered. Never really saw her. But I did. And I think she knew it. We started spending more time in quiet corners of the house. She'd find me in the laundry room, ask about my day while folding towels. I'd stay in the kitchen longer, wait for her to join me after Dad went to bed. We never planned it. It just kept happening. One night, she leaned in to show me something in a book, and her hair brushed against my cheek. I didn't move. Neither did she. She turned her head slightly. Our faces were too close. I saw the hesitation in her eyes. I felt the heat from her skin. My heart raced. I should have pulled away. But I didn't. And neither did she. We didn't kiss. Not yet. But everything in that moment said we already had in some unspoken way. The next day, she avoided me. And I understood. But it didn't last. She knocked on my door that night again. Said she was going for a walk. I offered to join. We didn't say much, just walked around the block, the night air cool and still. When we got back, she paused at the door. You scare me, she said. Why? Because I feel things I haven't let myself feel in a long time. I didn't answer. She turned and went inside. I stood there for a long time after, staring at the door, wondering how we got here, and knowing exactly how. The next few days were quiet, but not distant. We knew something was coming. We just didn't know when. I caught her looking at me across the table while Dad scrolled through his phone. She looked like she was trying to memorize me, and I was doing the same. There were no more accidental touches. Everything was intentional now. Every moment was a risk, but we kept choosing it anyway. And even though we hadn't crossed any physical line yet, we both knew we were already too far gone. The moment it finally happened, it didn't feel like a mistake. It felt like something that had been building for so long, it couldn't be denied any longer. It didn't explode. It unfolded. Quietly. Naturally. Like it was supposed to happen. It was late. Dad had fallen asleep in the living room, TV humming in the background. I walked into the kitchen and found her standing by the window, arms crossed, staring out like she was somewhere else entirely. She didn't turn when I entered. Just spoke. "Do you ever wish you could just stop time?" I stood beside her, not touching her, but close enough to feel the warmth from her body.
"Yeah.
All the time." She turned to me slowly, like she already knew what I was thinking. Her eyes didn't ask permission. They just waited. I didn't think. I moved. Our lips touched, and for a second, it was silent inside me. Then the rush came. Her hands pulled at me like she had been starving for years and just remembered how to eat. There was no hesitation, no guilt in that first kiss. Only need. We didn't talk afterward. There was no discussion, no breakdown of what it meant. She just looked at me like something had finally cracked open inside her. Then she walked away. The next morning, everything looked the same, but nothing felt the same. Dad sat at the table, coffee in hand, eyes dead on his phone. Rachel moved through the kitchen like she always did, calm, efficient, but her eyes kept flicking to me. Tiny glances, like reminders. We didn't speak all day. But later, when the house went quiet, I found her sitting alone in the dark, arms wrapped around her knees. She looked at me without saying a word. I sat beside her, and our hands found each other. "This isn't fair to you," she whispered. "You didn't force anything. I'm still married." "I know." She looked at me for a long time. "And you're still his son." It should have made me pull away. It didn't. We kept meeting in silence. No plans. No promises. Just instinct. Each time felt heavier. Not from guilt, but from the weight of what we couldn't undo. It wasn't just physical anymore. It was something that sat in the chest, permanent and loud. I started avoiding Dad. I couldn't look him in the eye. Not because I regretted anything, but because I knew he had no idea what was happening right under his roof. And somehow I hated him for that. He never noticed her pain. Never asked why her smiles disappeared quicker than before. Never cared that her eyes looked like they were always holding back water. He came home one night and started an argument over the laundry. She'd forgotten to fold his shirts. It was stupid, nothing, but he yelled. Loud and careless. I stood there listening from upstairs, fists clenched, wanting to say something, do something. She never raised her voice. Never fought back. Later, she came to my room. I could see her eyes were red. "He doesn't hit me," she said. "In case you're wondering." I wasn't. She sat beside me on the bed, silent for a long time. "He just forgets I'm a person." The words were soft but sharp. "You're not invisible to me." She looked at me then, and I knew she believed it. It kept happening. Not often. Not every night. But enough. Enough to burn itself into both of us. We learned each other's bodies like they were languages. Quiet ones. Urgent ones. She kissed like she was afraid it would end, and I held her like I couldn't afford to let go. But it was more than physical. She started showing me pieces of herself no one else saw. Her unfinished poems. Her old journals. The songs she used to love before her life became routine. "I used to dance," she told me once. "Why'd you stop?" I didn't like how I looked anymore. I told her she was beautiful. She rolled her eyes at first. But I said it again. And again. Until she stopped looking away when I said it. One night, we lay on the floor of the guest room, tangled up in each other, the ceiling fan spinning slowly above. "Are we bad people?" she asked. I didn't know how to answer that. "I don't feel bad," I said. "Me neither." But she didn't say it with pride. She said it like a confession. We weren't pretending anymore. Not with each other. But around him we had to. And that became its own kind of pain. We started flinching when he entered a room. watching every word, every glance, every inch of space between us. It was exhausting, and the pressure started to build. She told me once she dreamed of leaving, packing a bag, and disappearing. No goodbyes, just a clean break. She smiled when she said it, but it didn't reach her eyes. Asked her if she ever really would. She looked at me for a long time and said, "Would you come with me if I did?" I didn't answer right away. I didn't have to. I think that was the first time we both realized it was no longer just an affair. It wasn't about rebellion or loneliness anymore. It was about love. Real, painful, impossible love. And once that was out in the open, it got harder. We wanted more time, more space. But the walls of the house started closing in. Every sound felt like a threat. Every creak of the stairs, every car door outside, every footstep made us jump. We became shadows. Careful, cautious, always looking over our shoulders. But in those stolen moments, we were more alive than ever. She told me I made her feel young again. I told her she made me feel like I mattered. We weren't pretending to fix anything. We were just trying to hold on to something real before it got taken away. Then came the day everything almost fell apart. I was in the garage looking for a screwdriver, and Dad came in. He looked tired, more tired than usual. He sat down, wiped his face. "You think Rachel's happy?" he asked out of nowhere. The question hit me hard. I didn't know what to say. She doesn't talk much anymore. Just does stuff. Like she's already gone, you know? I nodded slowly. "I don't blame her," he added. "I haven't been the best." It was the first time I'd heard him sound human about her. "She deserves more," he said. "Someone who really sees her." And then he walked out. I stood there, heart racing, unsure if he knew, unsure if he'd seen something. But he didn't say another word about it. That night, I told her. She went quiet, then whispered, "It's too late for him to wake up." We held each other tighter than usual that night, like something was ending, even if we didn't know what. Everything felt more fragile after that. We knew the clock was ticking. Something had to break soon. Us, the lie, the illusion of normal. We just didn't know which would shatter first. She started pulling away before I noticed. Not physically, we still touched, still kissed in silence, but emotionally, she was slipping. Her words got shorter. Her eyes lingered less. She stopped smiling at the things she used to. I could feel it, even if she didn't say it. I asked her if something was wrong. She shook her head, said she was just tired. But I knew better. I knew her rhythms. And this wasn't tired. This was retreat. For days, we barely talked. I still saw her. We still passed each other in the hall, still shared space. But the closeness was gone. She was building a wall I couldn't reach over. Then, one night, she came to my room, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared at the floor. "I've been thinking," she said. That sentence alone made my stomach turn. "I can't keep doing this," she continued. "It's not because I don't care. That's the problem, I care too much." I sat up, heart pounding. "I love you," she said. "But I hate what that means." I didn't say anything. I didn't want to make it worse by trying to fix it with words. "I look at you and feel like I'm alive again. But I also feel like I've destroyed the last piece of myself that had any integrity." "You didn't destroy anything," I said quietly. "You finally chose yourself." She looked at me, eyes full of so many conflicting things: love, guilt, fear. "You deserve a clean life. Not one tied to a woman who can't even look her husband in the eye anymore." "I don't care what I deserve," I said. "I just care about what's real." She reached for my hand and squeezed it tight, like she didn't want to let go. But then she did. And I knew that was the beginning of the end. The next day, she was different again. Colder. Not angry, just distant. Like she'd already made a decision and was working to stick to it. She told Dad she wanted to take a short trip to clear her head. He didn't ask many questions, just nodded and went back to whatever was on his laptop. I watched her pack a small bag, and neither of us said what we were thinking. Before she left, she came into my room one last time. She didn't sit. Just stood there, hands wrapped around the strap of her purse like it was the only thing holding her together. If I stay, I'll keep choosing you, she said. And that'll ruin both of us. I stood, walked to her, and placed a hand on her cheek. She leaned into it. I already chose you, I said. I know. That's what scares me. She kissed me once, soft, long, final. Then she walked out. And just like that, she was gone. The house felt different immediately. Bigger. Emptier. Her absence echoed in every room. Dad didn't seem to care much. He just moved through his routine, barely noticing anything had changed. He mentioned she needed space, said she was probably overthinking again. I didn't say a word. I waited for her to call. She didn't. I checked my messages, scrolled through old ones, reread everything we'd said. Days passed. Then a week. Nothing. It started to feel like a dream. Like maybe I'd imagined the whole thing. But I hadn't. The ache in my chest proved it. Eventually, Dad mentioned she was staying with her sister for a while. Said she might not be coming back. He sounded annoyed, more inconvenienced than heartbroken. I gave her a good life, he muttered. Don't know what else she wants. I almost laughed. But I didn't. That night, I drove to the edge of town. Parked near a small overlook and just sat there, trying to understand how something that felt so real could vanish without a trace. It would have been easier if I hated her. But I didn't. I couldn't. She had given me something no one ever had, raw honesty, even when it hurt. She showed me what it meant to be seen, completely, without apology. And now, I had to carry that without her. Months passed. I went back to school. Threw myself into classes, work, anything to keep from thinking too much. People around me noticed the change. I was quieter, more focused, but colder too. Friends asked if I was okay. I lied every time. Dad never mentioned her again. Eventually, it was like she'd been edited out of the house entirely. Her clothes disappeared. Her scent faded. Her name stopped being said. But she lived in me still. In the way I paused when reading certain lines of a book, in the songs I couldn't listen to anymore, in the parts of me that no longer felt like a boy. I tried dating. Tried finding connection elsewhere. But it always felt shallow. Forced. No one had her depth. Her contradictions. Her truth. Then, out of nowhere, she texted. It was simple. I think of you. Every day. I just couldn't keep hurting us both. I stared at the message for hours before responding. I never stopped choosing you. She didn't reply after that. Not right away. Weeks later, another message came. I live alone now. Quiet place. Not far. No invitation. Just information. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't know what it meant. Was she reaching out? Was she just saying she existed? More time passed. I found myself driving past places we used to sit. The bookstore she loved. The park bench we never touched each other on but shared everything with our eyes. I started writing. Not stories, just fragments. Lines she might have liked. Things I never got to say. Then one day, I saw her. In the city, walking alone, hair up, jacket wrapped tight. She looked peaceful. But older, somehow. Like time had passed faster for her than for the rest of us. She didn't see me. I didn't call out. Just watched from across the street, heart heavy but calm. She kept walking. I let her go. And in that moment, I realized something I hadn't been able to admit before. She was a season in my life. A fire that burned through the numbness and left me changed. Not broken. Not bitter. Just different. She taught me what real love looks like when it's messy. When it costs you more than it gives. When it opens you up in ways you never asked for. And even though we didn't end up together, even though we couldn't, I wouldn't take any of it back. Some loves are meant to last. Some are meant to wake you up. And she did. She woke me up. And I will never sleep the same way again.